Hi everyone, this is Ashlyn. I'm coming to you from group number 6, and my group has myself, Ashlyn Register, Christy Lorimer, Deborah Jackson, Madison Gallant, Melissa DeLulo, and Robin Chadwick. And I'm going to be talking to you about our community assessment paper and project, which was working with a women's place in Greeley, Colorado. Go back a slide for you. So we chose this project because we were interested in working with sexual assault victims because of a speaker that we had in our third semester, labor and delivery semester. We had a guest speaker from MCMC who was the head of the forensic nursing department and also a sexual assault nurse examiner. So she spoke to us about identifying domestic violence and creating safety plans for victims. And so this semester, we took that knowledge and we took that understanding, and we're just so inspired by it that we wanted to use that in this community assessment and intervention plan to be able to help this community, these people who are affected by sexual assault and especially domestic violence as well. So we sought out a lot of different options to be able to work with that. We're looking through NCMC and other places. And what we really came back to was a women's place in Greeley, Colorado, which is a shelter for domestic violence victims. A women's place, one of their mission statement is to help empower victims. Excuse me, sorry, my face is in the way. Help empower victims and survivors of domestic abuse to become safe, secure, and self-reliant, and through education and collaboration to mobilize our community to help prevent domestic violence. So that core statement is just exactly what we were looking for as far as working with anyway. Those are exactly what we were looking for in trying to help this community out. So a little history on a women's place. It was founded in 1977, and it's free services to all domestic violence victims and their families. It's confidential, it's safe, and of course affordable because it's free. So yeah, keep going. So a little history and comparison throughout Greeley as our local city, inside of Weld County, which was our more broad population, inside the even broader population of Colorado, inside the even broader population of the United States. So our population of focus is Greeley, Colorado, which has a population of about 108,000 people. The median income is about $55,000 a year, and our poverty level is about 17%. All right, let's compare that to our state level, which has a population of 5,758,736 people, give or take, with a median income of $68,811, which is higher than the Greeley median income. And the poverty level in Colorado as a whole is about 9.3%. So you can see that Greeley has a much higher poverty level than Colorado. And then the United States, which has a population of 328 billion, you can read, great, that was cool, and has a median income of $60,293 on average, and the poverty level is about 10.5%. So you can see that Greeley is significantly higher than both the state and the national level of poverty, and lower on its median income by at least $5,000. Cool. So, community health problem. We were seeing that shelters are help. Sorry, excuse me. Let me just go back a little bit. So the community health issue we chose to address is the sexual assault and domestic violence in the community of Greeley, Colorado. At the beginning of this project, our focus was towards sexual assault and their victims. There are more than 433,648 victims to sexual assault in a year in the United States. In Colorado last year, there was 3,872 forcible rapes. So our focus was to support victims physical, emotional, and psychological needs. So we decided to serve the Women's Place, or a Women's Place, who provided support for sexual assault victims as well as domestic abuse victims. So last year in 2019, a Women's Place served 540 people, sorry, my words, and answered 819 crisis calls. This is like a huge number, especially because that's just in Greeley in 2019. In the state of Colorado as a whole, 43 people died in 2018 as a result of domestic violence and as a victim of domestic violence. In the United States, 20 people per minute are victims of domestic violence, adding to more than 10 million people per year. That's a lot of people who are affected by this. And so you can see why this is such an important thing to help. You can also understand that how shelters can help through education, advocacy, safety, anonymity, and counseling. Like, they can combine so many resources for people who are affected by domestic violence. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to help this community intervention, which is already in place, instead of building another intervention. Sweet. So these are some of the resources for that we have in Greeley already at our disposal. So the Sexual Assault Victims Advocacy Center, SAVA, has their number, their office number, and that provides crisis intervention, advocacy, counseling for all who are affected by sexual violence. We also have Women Incested Needing Group Support, WINGS. That's their number there, and their peer support groups for survivors, especially childhood sexual abuse, and especially incest. A Women's Place, which we were already talking about, services for battered women, including safe housing, crisis counseling, support, and advocacy. North Colorado Medical Center, which has 24-hour emergency care, rape kit procedures, preventing care for STIs and pregnancy, and North Range Behavioral Health, which has resources to be able to provide people with the means to provide individual, family, and group therapy. And then the Weld County Sheriff's Department, which has 2 victim specialists and a director and a team of volunteer advocates. Cool. So Weld County is fortunate because we have resources that support victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. A Women's Place provides primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention for victims. However, current programs to support victims are in need of support through funding and supplies. So we can see that these are programs that are already meeting the needs, and basically the biggest need that we have is to be able to supply them with consistent means, especially physical needs like safety, shelter, beds, bedding, clothes, shoes, household goods, food, etc., which is a really big concern, especially in COVID. A Women's Place was super helpful in 2019 because they had those high numbers, right? But this year in 2020, because of limited capacity, because of COVID restrictions, they've been experiencing a lot of different kinds of problems in this year that were unforeseen, and having to cap off people that they wouldn't normally have to. So for our community diagnosis, we just said that they had a readiness for enhanced community coping, as evidenced by requests for more school food items to give to survivors of assault by a Women's Place in Greeley. So they need a safe avenue and resources to leave their a dangerous situation behind. We also can see that food is an absolute necessity. There's having limited resources with food access, especially for people who are victims of sexual assault or domestic violence. They might not have the same kind of resources or access to funds, independent income, to be able to provide for food for themselves or for their kids if they're trying to get away. So we saw that the larger community of Greeley has capacity to meet those needs in small ways by group donations. So our action plan. We met with a representative from a Women's Place to determine the greatest need. So we first thought this was going to be like clothes for families and stuff like that. And what they actually identified for us was shelf-stable children's food items. That means like peanut butter, jelly, fruit snacks, fruit cups, Go-Gurt sticks, all these things that are helpful for actually packing children's food lunches, which is something we would never have understood if we hadn't talked to our representative from the Women's Place. So we then were thinking, okay, how can we take care of this need? Which, by the way, a little context for that. The reason why they need children's food lunch items is because women who leave their families, or women who leave their abusive husbands or relationships, any relationships that have violence in them, they might have children with them. And especially during the school season, these kids need lunches. And how often do we see people getting donations for green beans, tomatoes, or peas, or whatever? We see all those things coming through, corn, especially over the holiday season. But none of those things are actually applicable for children who are going to school and might not be a good consideration for them. So we were really oriented towards setting up a sustainable plan for collection. So we had an initial collection online. We were thinking for this time of having an initial collection online and then future collections through Student Nurses Association with campuses, or with bins on the campus. Then we're going to submit the donations to a Women's Place and then evaluate the effectiveness and the continuing needs of the population. This is something that's very flexible, especially having bins. We can make this a little bit more loose as far as being able to talk to the representative from a Women's Place that we made, and then being able to establish what needs to go in those bins in any particular season. So we had 3 measurable indicators. The first one was meeting with a Women's Place representative and assessing the needs of the programs, prepare the bins, and then set up the online donations through Sign Up Genius and share them. We had one outcome that was super measurable, making sizable donation of food and items to a Women's Place. So implementation, this was really hard due to COVID-19 restrictions. We had a first attempt of canceled because they couldn't accept clothing items, which was our primary means of being able to donate. That's what we had initially thought. Not only because they weren't accepting anything that wasn't new with a tag on it, but also because we realized that that's not very affordable given our target population that we were trying to reach out to, which is college students. Not a lot of college students can afford to buy brand new clothing. Once we realized that that was what the need was. So our second attempt was to have donation bins on campus and in Gunter Hall, throughout buildings, to be able to collect school lunch supplies. But that was canceled because of campus closure due to COVID restrictions upping and higher cases of COVID restrictions. Also, it's very hard to, in this time period of COVID, have a station open to be able to drop items off when COVID can live on surfaces for a while, and you might need to, you never know how many people are going to be trying to donate things at the same time. It's very hard to control the flow of traffic or the flow, unless that box or bin was manned 24/7 or had certain hours throughout the week. So our third and final attempt was through Sign Up Genius, having a measurable way for people to pledge what they want to donate, and then having spread out locations throughout northern Colorado, in Frederick, and 2 locations in Greeley, to drop off items, which would then send them to a Women's Place. This kind of like allowed for less populations and fewer sites that are more spread out. And then sustainability. We saw that through SNA, we could prepare these collection bins with the UNC logo and having Student Nurse Association on them, having that universal appeal for just donations be something that we could see. So I don't know if you guys can see this right now, but I actually have a bin here in my room. Boom. Look at this bin. Wow. Okay. Trying really hard. Not sure if you can see it, but it says donation items sponsored by UNC Student Nurses Association. Super universal, super helpful. Great. So evaluation. We said that this project needs to fill a need that isn't always addressed. So canned food, and like I was saying earlier, canned food and boxed food are donated regularly, but the children's lunch items don't always happen. Actually, there are a lot fewer donations of children's lunch items. So we could use these bins to continue to supply lunch foods, especially when school starts up again for the kiddos. and what did we want to do differently, like considering the impact of the current circumstances when we were planning this project. We could totally do many different things instead of what we had to do this time. What we were so excited about too when we were looking at this project was how happy people were and willing to help, especially at a time when so many people are also in need of assistance themselves. There's so much generosity, and not just because of the holiday season. People are so much more willing to see the needs of others because they see their own need as well, which was so beautiful. So, legal and ethical concerns. This was something that was really interesting, kind of reflecting on it. On the legal side of things, as we were looking at our population, they have a lot of legal issues that they might have to combat against. One of them is like, if parties are married, they have to get a divorce. There has to be a division of assets going on. There might be also charges for abuse, custody battles if there's children going on. There has to be witness testimonies, which might require further contact and safety for those who are affected by the violence, if those charges don't actually stick on the person who they were accused. A lot of times in our legal system, we can see that this population has a hard time getting justice because it is so hard, especially in a marriage relationship, for there to be any kind of accountability or any kind of mutual any kind of accountability or I can't find the right word for it right now. I'm blanking. But there's a protection in marriages that prevent one married person from saying to the other person, oh, well, you told me that you were going to kill me. And then this other person being like, no, I didn't. That's called hearsay. And there's a protected place in marriage for that, which makes it very difficult when it comes to trying to get a divorce or trying to get custody or to prove that there has been abuse if there hasn't been documentable evidence at an ER or by a SANE nurse about those sexual assault wounds. Ethical issues and concerns that we had about this situation were about withholding children without the proof of abuse. There are some situations where people might be using the guise of a abuse situation to manipulate their partner, which is a huge problem. We don't want to withhold children from being able to contact their other parent if abuse isn't actually a thing. Proving sexual assault in a marriage where there was consent involved, like that's a really big ethical question and a legal question as well. And like I was saying earlier, it's hard to prove non-physical abuse, like emotional or psychological abuse. Gaslighting is a real thing, and people are very impacted by that. So these are our references. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble a little bit about our project. We are just so thankful for your guys' flexibility and willingness to donate during this difficult time period. We were so excited about the number of donations that we got to bring, and we will be taking a load over to a women's place this Wednesday and dropping off those bins with the Student Nurses Association to be kept for future semesters, to be able to continue to do drives like this for a variety of things, continuing with a women's place so they can have a little bit more steady income of these kinds of items. Or even working with other populations, which would be so cool as well. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a great break and that you enjoyed this presentation. If you have any questions, please contact any one of the members of our group. We would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And yeah, have a great day, guys. Good night.